Now, our next group of presenters will speak to creating those winning moments at times that matter the most in this New World case study. Dominic Quin, he's General Manager Marketing and Customer Strategy at Foodstuffs Group. Rupert Price, who's Chief Strategy Officer at DDB Aotearoa, and Abby Parkin, who's MD at PhD. They're going to speak about the role of emotion in the path to purchase and how this is applied to the New World model in both comms and media. There's the three of them up there, and now the three of them coming to the stage. And then we'll have a Q&A with them alongside Richard afterwards. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
You going to stay up here, or do you reckon?
Yeah.
Hang around. Sit down there.
Yeah, we'll wait.
I think we've got a video first. Hello, everyone. How you doing? Good. I think we've got a video. Why don't we play that, and then we'll kick off, if that's okay. Thank you. I'll click forward. There you go. I'll click back. Right, got that working. Right, it's great to be here. I've got 15 minutes. That's what I've got my time allocation. Otherwise, I have a very angry Abby behind me, who's the third in the row. We thought we'll take you on a bit of a journey today, and it's great to be here. Awesome presenters this morning. I do love the word omni-channel. Sorry, but I do. It helps a lot of our members, our store owners, understand what a person who shops in-store and online actually does. So really like that. Thank you for introducing me truly as Dominic. It feels like I need to go to France. And my mum's the only one who calls me Dominic, so Dominic is pretty cool too. So I'll add that to the list. Anyway, we thought what we'd do today is take you through our journey. It might be, for you, it might be, well, we thought you'd be a bit more advanced than where you are. For others, it might be, well, I'm going to get something out of this session, and hopefully we'll give you some learnings that you can take away. But anyway, it's our journey. It's kind of where we are, and it's a good thing to share. So I'm going to share it through the business lens for 15 minutes. Then Rupert's going to take it from a creative point of view, talking obviously about the moments that matter the most when you actually talk to customers and who they are. And then Abs is going to follow up with the media lens. So hopefully someone gets something out of today, which would be good. Okay, I'll kick off for business. So from a business point of view, the first thing I'd say, it's never a bad time to actually just stop. Have a good, hard look at yourself and actually try and work out what's going on with the consumers you're trying to market to. And for us, we had a very big stop session in F20, which is 2019 to 2020 in our financial year, when our market share was looking like something like this. And obviously, I've taken out numbers. We've got competitors in the room, so even the presentation will only go to a certain depth of detail because we can't share everything. But there's plenty more, obviously, under the surface. So I guess my first bit of advice is try and take the time to sit down and have a really hard look at yourselves. Not we're down here and slightly up there, like seriously look at yourself. And I think for us, we've done that, and obviously, with our agency partners, we've taken a big focus on that. One of the things when you take a good hard look at yourself is some of the answers are already staring you right in your face, but you probably haven't really leveraged them enough. And one of the things for New World, so a little bit of history about New World when you look back, is it's called New World because in 1963, when it came into New Zealand, it was actually a new world of shopping. So traditionally in 63, you'd go in and speak to a grocer. The grocer would go and actually find all what you want, package it up, and give it to you over a counter. You've seen some programs probably on that. With New World, you can see by the photos, we introduced the thing called a serve over, and a serve over allows you to interact with people. So there's a very human element of choosing your products, and you go and choose them yourself and that sort of thing. So a nice little bit of history. And what you'll hear later, particularly in Rupert's section, is that how that plays out. But it's no different from what happens today. We've got 144 stores, sort of all through New Zealand. They're all owner-operated, which means they own the business themselves. And every single store is built for the community. Our latest is a $17 million investment in Wara, which is owned by Brooks and his wife. And they actually have obviously invested in that store and are going to take that store and build it out. If you don't know where that is, I think if you don't shop at New World in that little tiny town in Hawke's Bay, then you have another 80-kilometer sort of trip to go and find the other supermarket. That's Justin below with his wife, and they have Durham Street in Christchurch. And if you would like to go there, it's quite a flagship store. It's quite a nice store as well. So every single owner-operator basically operates to their community. We build the stores for those communities, which is based on the session this morning, and it's designed very heavily with the input from the member who knows their community really well. And it's another big feature that you'll see coming through. So that's really important for us as we sort of talk about our DNA of our brand and how that works in media and marketing. Lots been talked about where we are at the moment with this, but the COVID impact on our business has been huge. Being a local store, high hygiene standards, good quality, we did get a bit of a benefit out of that as people opted towards us versus to larger stores like Pack and Save, for example. But one of the things that came out of it is an acceleration of some of these macro trends that you can see on the screen here. Value for money is an interesting one because value for money isn't just price. It's a lot to do with convenience, a lot to do with familiarity, a lot to do with safety, a lot to do with other factors that drive value. So we're very conscious of that. I'm going to rush through these because I'm going to take too long. And I guess before we give the punchline at the end, the last couple of years, and particularly the momentum we've built, has been pretty positive. So we're very happy with what we're doing. So we are doing things right. We're definitely not at the end of the journey. We've got lots to do, and I'll show you some of that shortly. I've put this slide up here because one of the things, I guess one of the lessons I'd like to share is segmentation. So as marketers, we always, our job is to understand the customers better than anyone else, share it to the business, have a look at these, who's coming in your store. What we found is that we've done a lot of work on personas, Kevin, Sharon, Jeff, etc. Tried to take that and say, look, you've got a certain number of Jeffs in your store. That it doesn't work, hasn't worked anyway for us. But this has. This is a good lesson. And if you think about it, you probably can see where New World sits in this map in terms of where our skew to shoppers is and what their experiences are and where it isn't. And I think when you start looking generationally about shoppers and how they interact, you start digging out the deep motivations of why people shop. And also, what's really interesting in this is the interactions. I literally could spend the whole day talking through this, and if anybody else has presented on this generational thing, because you might go, oh, it's just everyone. But it's not, because everyone behaves significantly different. Obviously, there's digitally enablement on the right. There's silence, the silent generation on the left. Those who don't know, that's when kids used to be seen but not heard, hence the name. And then, they want to come in and have that human interaction, that familiarity, the cup of coffee. The reason why we build cafes in some of our stores is for some of this, there's a high level of loneliness in New Zealand, et cetera, more for once. So each of these, understanding in each catchment what and who comes into your store and how they interact with each other and influence each other is a big opportunity. I just wanted to touch on Gen Z because it links into the last presentation we talked about on the digital front. The Generation Z is obviously an incredibly important generation in terms of what we're influencing now in terms of conscious consumption, health and well-being, high levels of anxiety, and other trends that are coming through to influence that. But what's really interesting is this generation, which we don't talk much about, and many people probably don't even know they exist, but there you are. If you've got a 12-year-old or under, they are Generation Alpha. And Generation Alpha by 2025 will be 2 billion around the world. There'll be 500 million more than the millennials, and the millennials are the biggest cohort that we've got currently. And what's unique about these group is that they are severely technically enabled. So as you can see here, as you get a 6-year-old at the moment, and probably many people in this room have 6 months old, so not 6-year-old, 6-month-old, and the first thing you give a 6-month-old when they're bored is a tablet. And there you go. That's why they call them the swipe before they wipe generation. And they can literally swipe anything before they can wipe their backsides. But imagine putting the power of technology and interface into that customer experiences. So when we build stores or build CX and build all the interface, these guys from 12 to 0 are really what we should be looking at in terms of what's coming through and how they interface with us. They're going to be very powerful, they're going to be most informed, and they actually know how to use a tablet as well. One of the things, the other lesson that we've learned over the last couple of years is creating a customer promise. So we have 3 customer promises, which hopefully reflect some of the discussion you heard this morning. And again, if your business can't articulate what your customer promise is for your brand entirely, from shop floor to owner-operator to marketing head then you probably are missing out on something and you're probably not focused enough. So what we've created is 3 customer promises. You can see their fair value every day. We're never going to be the cheapest supermarket, but we need to work really hard to give fair value every day on our pricing, and we've got projects on that. Inspiring solutions, so that's all the meals solutions we have at the moment. So Master Chef plays into that, for example. And then you've got awesome experiences, which is about the in-store experience primarily, but online as well. And because we're late to the piece on online, we need to obviously offer something that's different to Countdown. So we want them to jump away from Countdown onto our platform. So that's really important. What we've built is a research model that sits under here for every store that builds up to national. So it's an attribution model, and we can work from in-store experience to brand perception and understand whether we need to build something as an in-store experience or we need to change the perception from a brand. So it's kind of a whole new way of looking at research in terms of building that out. So we can give a guide to the owner of the store what he or she should do to her store or his store, but equally as marketers where we're actually needing to build, reinforce, or change perceptions. So it's important for you to understand that, and that would be one of the takeaways I'd offer up, which is if you can get to your promises, that's good. Like we talked about this morning, creating omni-channel, great omni-channel experience is really quite difficult. So it actually takes a bit of tech. So one of the things we did in our strategy is actually take the strategy and put it into 4 buckets onto 3 horizons, good old McKinsey horizons. And one of the things we've been focusing on really at the moment and getting right is our marketing programs and creating a relevant, differentiated brand. And Rupert will talk about that shortly. And making sure that the marketing programs lead into that brand so we don't try and become schizophrenic. We're far more focused on our offer and on our promises that we're offering customers. The second one, which we'll touch on today, which are really important, are the customer journeys, which is why we've called it Moments That Matter, and actually trying to work out, particularly for the Generation Z and the millennials, which are the moments that you were winning and losing in versus Countdown, particularly. And what are those moments that we have to win the shop? Because there's some critical ones, obviously, in the digital world, in search particularly. So Abby will talk a little bit about that. And then insights and intelligence. So we've built a whole new platform where we can actually collate our customer data, understand how they're behaving, and using it to drive our insights, which ultimately drive the business performance. So we're putting the customer at the center of everything that we do. So we've taken ownership of that as a business, not tried to give it to the media house or anybody else, and we've built a team up who's driving that and building that now. Again, using the latest technology, and we're doing a bit of work with Google and Simon on that as well. The last one, which is the hardest, which is why you need to start way over here to actually get some sort of impact in year 4, is the omni-channel experience. I even put it in my presentation because it's so good. There you are, Juanita. It's personalized omni-channel experiences, relevant, connected, and ultra easy. So that's what everyone's looking for. Again, Gen Z, Millennial Gen Z, Alpha, we're ready for you. We're going to be ready for you for when you're getting into your main shop, and we want to make sure that we're relevant, connected, personalized, and ultra convenient or easy as well. So, the end of my section, I just wanted to share again another learning, which hopefully you may or may not appreciate, but we think this model's pretty cool. I don't know if many of you have seen this model before. It's inspired by Procter & Gamble, Google have had a crack at it, but it's called the 3 moments of truth. So when you ever buy anything, or even have a relationship actually with a person, you go through 3 different stages. One is the 0 moment of truth, One is the first and one is SMOT. Quick bit of history, because I'm not sure if I'm over time, but I'm not looking over that way. So Procter & Gamble came up with this concept that the most important moment you have to win with your customer is when they buy the product to that shelf. And they weren't wrong. And they call that the first moment of truth. I think it was Google came out a little bit later and said, you're wrong. The most important moment of truth is when they're at that awareness and consideration stage, when they're searching for stuff, searching for partners, searching for products to buy. Again, the model works in lots of ways. And that's why you have to win that moment of truth. And then the last one, which I don't know who wants to own it, but I can't find an owner for this, is the second moment of truth. And the second moment of truth is when someone talks about something, refers it, creates advocacy, enjoyment, and it's posted usually on social media as a rating. And what happens is that the second moment of truth in social media feeds the zero moment of truth for lots of people. So that whole cyclical event you can see here, and it goes round like a flywheel, if you get that right, is very powerful. So there's another tip for you, and it's quite good, I think. Because when you get to this model, which is what we talked about today with customer journeys this morning, is it actually retailing is very difficult. When you've got 5 generations, just about to have a 6th one, underneath that you've got different personas and segments and et cetera. And then in this case, in our case for New World, we've got 10 distinct moments that matter that we have to give great customer experience. It gets hard. And retailing and marketing and retail is difficult, and therefore what we have to do is make sure the ones that we really matter for the customers are the ones that are winning, and they vary quite considerably in those generations, and will do with the alphas. So with that, I'm now going to go to Rupert to give you an update on emotions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Thanks, Dom. Round of applause for Dom. Well played, Dom. I'm going to be slightly contrarian in that we've heard a lot this morning about AI. We've heard a lot about reducing friction. We've heard a lot about the efficiencies of retail and where it's going next. I'm just going to talk about people. I'm going to talk about human beings and how they relate to retail and how we relate to them when they're in that retail moment. So this is all about putting emotion into the moments that matter. We've heard a lot about Amazon and their frictionless stores and the fact that you can just walk in and walk out. Jeff Bezos has said that your margin is my opportunity. And that's great when you're huge and you own half the planet and you have half the planet's resources at your disposal. But when you're a little old grocery retailer down here in New Zealand, you've got to be a little bit more resourceful than that. Also, if he keeps giving away free wine from stores, then I suspect his margin ain't going to be so great either. So we, when certainly at DDB, and Dom was talking about this reset on the brand a couple of years ago, when we first became involved with New World, we did a bit of a reset thinking moment ourselves. And Challenger brand, I'm sure you're all familiar with, Eat Big Fish, the famous book that was written 25 years ago now, actually, all about Challenger branding. But I think people get mistaken when they think about Challenger brands. They think it's all about the underdog, and it's all about picking a fight, and it's all about going there and making trouble and shaking up the market. But there are other ways to adopt and bring challenger thinking into your organization. And the way we've chosen to do it with New World is really to play up to the real and human. So as we see all the trends that we were talking about this morning are pushing us towards automation, pushing us to efficiency, are pushing us towards frictionless, when the reality is that retail is still a people business. And I think the owner-operator model that we have at New World really plays into that. And Dom's absolutely right. Each of those stores that you visit are very different because they're tailored for the community they serve. I was down in Wairoa, the store that Dom was talking about last week for the official opening. Wairoa is a tiny little town in the Hawke's Bay, 10,000 people. As Dom says, it's a 90-minute drive to the nearest other supermarket. So they've got a pretty captive market, but still they feel an important sense of responsibility to serving that community and giving that community the best they can. It's also the only store opening I've ever been to that the mongrel mob turned up at. But there you go. That tells you what small town New Zealand's like. But there were certainly no algorithms going on down there, and there was certainly no AI either. It was all about real people. And I think it's easy for us to forget in this technology-enabled world that actually retail is still about people. We're still trying to connect with people, communicate with people, And it's ultimately people who we're looking to build our business upon. So we should never forget the mindset of that consumer that we're trying to connect with, the human being that sits behind the transaction. Something's Cooking at New World really sums up our propositions. When we look at the New World offer, it's really the added value stuff. It's the stuff around the edge of the store that really makes, thanks mate, that really makes the New World offer really, really memorable and stand out. I think Bruce was saying earlier, play to your strengths and understand who you are as a brand and how you deliver that in your experience. And with New World, we have in-store bakers, in-store butchers, in-store fishmongers. We have in-store experts on wine and beer and all those other added value elements that don't show up in Mr. Bezos's algorithm, but add incredible value to the in-store experience and also to the community experience that those store operators offer. And these are brought to life through a number of propositions, but it's all about understanding how we can bring humanity and emotion into those moments. Because marketing only works when it short-circuits the expected routine. So the thing about consistency and routine is that it creates that shopping on autopilot. It creates that subconscious shopping experience rather than the conscious one. But we sometimes want to create friction in that process because that's the friction that creates the experience. Because actually, when you can get the experience right, it creates that positive emotional connection with the brand, which creates affinity, which brings the customer back time and time again. So sometimes friction works, but it's positive friction, and making sure that you make those peaks in the experience emotional and a positive emotion with that too. Incredibly important. I spend a lot of time talking to customers, and I think this is the other thing that we need to remember when we're talking about real human beings who are at the end of the shopping experience, and we think about the moments that matter to them. Human beings are quite contrarian. Sometimes they want efficiency, sometimes they don't want to talk to anybody, sometimes they just want to get in and out, but other times they want to spend and dwell and be inspired and be immersed in the experience as well. And we have to understand the different missions and the different mindsets that people have when they come into shopping. These are just some quotes from some customers we spoke to. This was a particular attack on the home delivery food box experience. For me, I don't like everything is in one box. I like to go shopping. It takes away a lot of my choices. And I think we're seeing this actually with the food boxes now, that they've gone past that sort of peak euphoria of, oh, wow, it's amazing. It's all delivered to my door and I can just cook at home. People are actually still craving that in-store experience where I can browse and I can shop and I can explore and I can discover. An incredibly important part of the shopping experience that we should never lose or we should never take away. A nice quote here. I love sampling when they have it on New World. They're awesome. But when you're busy, you've got kids, you just want to go. I don't want to enjoy it, but I can't with them. So shopping with kids is a very different experience from shopping without kids. And understanding the difference and in those modes and in those moments is how we really begin to unlock some of the emotion in the moments that matter. And why are emotions important? Emotions are important because they help you sell. So here's a quote. People think less than we think. The more we feel, the more we buy. I think System 1 research are really the pioneers in that space of understanding the connection of emotion to people's purchase tendencies and purchase habits. And emotion is incredibly important. So, Richard, not to do you a disservice, on your amazing chart, that all look like this one on the left here, look like the circuit board of a computer. But the reality is that humanity and emotion is still an incredibly potent way of connecting with customers and realizing sell. When we first got involved, politics aside, when we first got involved with New World, we talked to a lot of customers. And a lot of customers, particularly millennials, actually found New World pretty inaccessible. It felt like John Key, to use their own words. It felt quite disapproving, quite stern, and not a particularly welcoming experience. They wanted shopping to be a bit more like Jacinda. So how could we make the New World experience feel a bit more uplifting, a bit more positive, and bring some positive emotion into that experience? And so that's where we had to dig deeper to really understand the customer better. Now, a little show of hands, a little interactive exercise here. Who knows what they're having for dinner tonight? Put your hand up if you know what they're having for dinner tonight. Yeah, that's about right. So there's only a small scattering of people here in the room know what they're having for dinner tonight. And actually, most people in this room still won't know what they're having for dinner tonight by 4 p.m. this afternoon. And that's a daily challenge that people face day in, day out, day in, day out. It never goes away. And we also heard from Juanita about people wanting to live their best life. So there's this conundrum that's building, which is this contradiction between, on the one hand, I want to live my best life and I want to serve my family great food and I want mealtime to be this brilliant, positive experience where we all connect and we all come together around the dinner table. But at the same time, by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I still don't know what the solution is, and I'm getting stressed, and it's just adding more anxiety, and I'm a busy person, and I've got lots going on in my life. I see lots of nodding as I'm saying this. And then I've got to deal with this dinner thing when I get home, and it's going to be my responsibility. And then, you know what? It all starts again tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. So as we dig into the emotion, particularly around grocery shopping, we learned that actually grocery shopping is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can be incredibly positive and inspiring, and we can get lost in that indulgent world of food and all the amazing stuff that food brings to our lives, the joy of sharing and all that kind of stuff. But also that comes with it is an enormous amount of anxiety and stress and responsibility, that tyranny of dinner every night. How do we solve that problem? And when we really talk to customers, what we found out is that they constantly walk this tightrope of sometimes I feel like I'm winning, sometimes I feel like I'm losing, sometimes I feel like I take a step forward, and sometimes I feel like I take a step back. And I really want a retail brand in the grocery space to help me with that. How do you make me feel like I'm winning more than I'm losing? And really that's the direction we're taking the New World brand in. So a facilitator of winning. How can we help you as a New Zealand shopper feel like you're winning in the kitchen? And that's what we're all about. And so even when we do associations with MasterChef or Bake Off, it's all about inspiring people just to try that little bit more. But also with the back end of all that I explained earlier with the bakery and the in-store butcher and all those other support systems, the added value systems that sit around the retail proposition, helping you win in the kitchen is really the emotion that we want to own. And the more that we can own that emotion and keep coming back to it time and time and time again, the more we'll create a distinctive position for the brand. And that's what it's all about. And the other really important learning is that I think when we saw that chart where New World's market share was just declining year on year, we were learning that actually that's because we were talking about ourselves a lot. New World was talking about itself and what was important to itself. And I think Bruce made the point, that sometimes a retail offer can sometimes feel like the first stop in a supply chain, and it's all about what the retailer wants to put in front of the customer rather than what the customer wants. So we've been through a learning exercise. How do we express everything that we do at every touch point in every moment? Not only do we need to bring emotion into that, but we need to do it through the eyes of the customer. It needs to be credible, believable, real. And by doing that, that's how we become a bit more Jacinda and a bit less John. And it's understanding the full customer journey and the gamut of touch points that we have, which is all our opportunity to create that brand distinction as we build and go forward. So we call it from Instagram to in-store. It's not just about the TV advertising. It's not just about the in-store display stand. It's not just about popping up on social media every now and again. It's making sure that it's all working together, and it's always on, and it's always working consistently. And that takes an awful lot of effort. It takes an awful lot of people. It takes a big team to deliver that consistently over time. And that's the challenge. But to win in retail, it is a big job, but if you can get it right, the rewards are there to be had. And as Dom's chart showed, the bar chart is beginning to go in the right direction again. And I think it's because as a brand, we're turning up with a consistent experience in an empathetic way that really understands the fundamental emotional needs of our customer. And with that, I'm just going to play you a little ad. Oh, no. If I press play, will that play? Yep. Oh, you guys are going to do it.
What's the recipe, Jess? I have to confess, it's actually store-bought.
Since we're sharing, I chose this wine because it had a pretty label.
I fed my kids fish fingers 4 nights this week.
I make baked sour cookies from the packet.
Aotearoa, it's time to get real. We've all got a little too much on our plate.
Who said a roast can't be a pre-cooked chook?
You're welcome.
It's okay to have breakfast for dinner. And if it doesn't turn out like the picture on the recipe, no biggie.
All right.
Because whether you want to make it or fake it, it's all good.
Because at New World, there's always something cooking.
I wasn't actually invited.
Oh, no. What's your name again?
Jeff.
There you go. So winning in the kitchen.
Thanks, Rope. Cool. Thanks, Rope. Hello, everyone. I've had the privilege of working with the New World business now for a couple of years. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we won the moments that matter through media. Oh, my clicker's not working. Okay, I might need to just wink at someone in the back instead. But before we did that, as per the chart that you saw that Dom showed with market share, we were in decline. So before we could kind of rightly show up and really compete and win those moments that mattered, we actually had to course correct in 4 key areas. So what I'm going to do now is talk to you a little about those 4 key areas of course correction. The first challenge we uncovered, when we first started working with New World, we did a recency, frequency and basket size analysis to really understand from a customer perspective where we were strong and where there was opportunity for growth. And based on the current comms and channel strategy, what we uncovered was we were preaching to the converted. We were talking to our core generation of shoppers. And as per Dom's chart that you saw earlier, the core shopper were those older generations. So we were missing a huge opportunity to unlock growth by connecting in the moments that mattered for those younger generations. So in terms of what was missing, when we thought about kind of the moments that mattered for those key generations, the channels we needed to use to unlock and connect with those audiences were different. But also, we've talked about this a little bit today, we've had a huge amount of audience fragmentation in terms of media consumption. And the current strategy New World had really didn't take into consideration the importance that digital plays throughout that path to purchase and in the moments that matter for all of the generations. So to rectify this, we had to manage the decline of some more traditional channels while substantially growing in some digital channels to make sure we could strike the most effective balance to both retain those core shoppers but also grow against those younger segments. So what did this look like in action? Next slide. Sorry, it's not working. There we go. What did it look like in action? So as a way, Foodstuffs is a really big organisation. There's a lot of key stakeholders and change can take time. So as a way for us to kind of galvanise the internal stakeholders, we packaged up the way we needed to shift our investment by what are the growth channels. So what are the channels that are going to unlock growth against those shoppers that we're not connecting with versus what are the retained channels and what are those channels that we're currently using that talk to your core. So as a result, we went from a balance that looked very off to one that looks like this today. So a much healthier balance of both those kind of retention channels and the growth ones. When I say retention channels, it's no surprise, a lot of them are digital. So social search, online video, display, out of home also sits there. And obviously, no surprises, the retention channels were traditional TV, radio and press. Now, the second challenge was when we started working with New World, they were trying to say everything, everywhere. I'm going to talk a little bit louder in case that rain drowns me out. There was no real framework when we started working with New World, and it very much was a bit of a scattergun approach, and there was no framework around the role for communication. And as a result, it didn't necessarily, the channel strategy didn't reflect the strength channels play based on the different roles for communication. As a default, and having historically been very reliant on share of voice as a planning tool, there were way too many messages in market within broadcast channels each month. And New World did have a reliance on TV to tell every single story, and a lack of consideration for the channel strengths across the different paths to purchase. We also know from research, both Millward Brown and WARC effectiveness studies, that the more messages you try to communicate in any single channel, the less likely any of those messages will land with impact. So with New World, we adopted the mantra, less is actually more. And as a result, we went from an annual TV plan that could be mistaken as a QR code to one that looked like this. So we actually reduced the messages in market by 75%. Now, that's not investment, that's messages and market. We still had a healthy TV investment. We still made sure we had TV on every week of the year, but it meant that when the messages were live, they could actually land with impact and effectiveness. The third challenge, similar to lots of retailers I'm sure in the room, New World had a real reliance on retail-based messaging, price and product and retail events to deliver that short-termism and see those kind of market share results. I'm sure lots of you in the room today have read the IPA research that talks about the fact that pretty much every single category can benefit from a really healthy balance of motive-led and rational-led messages in market. And as per Rupert said and Dom, New World had a beautiful brand story to tell, but we were prioritising about 85% of their investment in lower funnel efforts. And as Rupert spoke to you about earlier, it was really important to not only bring the emotion into the creative storytelling, but also bring emotion into not only our channel investment, but our media strategy. So our channel strategy in the sense that we actually put investment in the right places to get a healthier brand versus retail split, but also intentionally investing in premium environments to ensure our emotive comms could garner the greatest attention. Because it's not about just focusing on efficiency, it's appreciating the effectiveness that things like impact, screen size, and positioning can play, because not all reach is equal. And as a result, here's the brand versus retail investment over time. So as I mentioned, we went from 15% investment to brand to today, which is sitting at about 35%, with the goal to get to about 40%. Now, I must acknowledge that not all creative executions, you can kind of say, that's a brand ad and that's a retail ad. It's not as black and white as that. But what this is illustrating is the role the communication was designed to play. So what percentage of our comms were designed to make people feel something versus think or do something. So as you can see, a much healthier split now. And the last challenge we had is New World definitely doesn't have a data problem. In fact, they've got loads of first-party data, which I'm sure lots of brands would love to get their hands on. But it wasn't organised in a way that meant we could leverage it to its fullest potential. So the two key actions we took when we started working with New World, first we worked really collaboratively with the foodstuffs business to develop a customer insights engine that was called Customer 360 and is powered by the Google Cloud platform. And it enabled our first-party data, whether that be store-based transactional data, category and shopper behaviour from dunnhumby, or brand insights, to be organised in a way that laid the foundations for automation and surfaced a lot more meaningful insights. The second thing we did is we collaborated and developed dedicated partnerships with our key partners, Google and Meta, that helped the brand transform its performance and market with access to technical expertise, innovation, and training. And obviously there's a lot more to come in this space. Right, so now that we'd kind of course corrected in those 4 areas, we were ready to win the moments that mattered for New World and be future focused. And we've got a couple of strategies to talk to you about that. But first, we had to pause and think about the environment we were operating within. What can we control and what can't we? First of all, we can't compete on spend alone, and we also couldn't control the fact that there were new entrants coming into our category, whether that's direct to consumer, whether that's warehouse, and obviously Costco's on the way. We also had to acknowledge the fact that we're part of foodstuffs, and there's a portfolio of brands within foodstuffs. New World's never going to talk about being the lowest in price and market, nor should they. And we also couldn't put the infrastructure in overnight to catch up on our e-commerce expansion journey. So what tactics can we deliver to unlock the moments that matter? There's 3 key strategies I'm going to talk to you about today. The first was adopting challenger brand behaviours to make sure we put focus where it counts. The second is using our business model as our advantage, so not only from a portfolio perspective, but also the owner-operator model. And the third is better measurement, which is a huge focus in the industry at the moment. So, adopting a challenger mindset in media. Challenger brands, as Rupert mentioned earlier, we can look at the behaviours and the principles of challenger brands and look at our category and the retail category and think about how we can show up to use these principles as a competitive advantage. So some examples I'll talk you through. Instead of when we're doing campaign planning, just focusing on paid channels, We were really intentional about looking at the messaging framework and the campaign architecture to seed messages across both paid, owned and earned collaboratively to make sure this delivered scale and market for us versus just focusing on paid channels alone. Instead of just using brand assets, we are a real and human as our challenger archetype, and people is a really key part of our business. So it was really important we used people, partnerships, and brand assets to tell our story in the most authentic way. Act mainstream and as expected, so just showing up traditionally. Again, it was really important that we tried to get disproportionate share of voice and attention where spend again couldn't do it, and show up in unexpected ways. And lastly, conforming to category norms. Retail is probably one of those categories where you're kind of looking over your shoulder and watching what your competition's doing. It's really easy to think you need to show up in all the spaces they are and to emulate their strategies. And what we did with New World was we actually sat down with them, looked at their annual marketing calendar, and decided where we were going to sacrifice and overcommit. Where are our big bets that we can rightly show up and win, and where do we actually need to sacrifice? Otherwise, you end up with a whole bunch of marketing activities and nothing is funded appropriately. Oops, that's the sacrifice and overcommit. Now, I'm just going to I think a really nice example of how we kind of delivered those principles was New World's MasterChef partnership. New World could have sponsored MasterChef and chucked their logo on, done some nice integrations in the show and gone, yep, it makes sense, that alignment makes sense. Instead, what we did was we actually thought about it from a business opportunity. We thought about the moments that mattered across those key generations and thought about how we could actually deliver bespoke solutions across those moments to extract the most value we could out of this partnership. And that was across things like content. So we had bespoke, inspiring solutions content, fit for purpose across TV, out of home and social. From a commerce perspective, we delivered the Simply Dinner Kits in store, which had record sales. They were phenomenal. And from a convenience perspective, we linked the show right through to shoppable recipes online and recipe cards in store. So it didn't just become a marketing activity, it became a full business opportunity. Again, a really good example of sacrifice and overcommit. Our business construct became our competitive advantage. So unlike our competition who are here today, we don't have a centralised model, and there are a lot of benefits to that. However, when we actually looked internally at our construct, we realised that was our competitive advantage in two key areas. One, how we can leverage the portfolio, and two, how we can leverage the local owner-operator construct with the 140 plus stores and those store owners that have those local insights. So from a portfolio point of view, we can't win by being faster to market or outspending our competition. So we used a portfolio strategy to compete where it counted for each of the different brands. This meant that we intentionally decided which moments and categories we were going to own, cooperate, or participate in to win as a collective. It meant we played to our strengths, but it also meant the brands had to stay in their lanes, which is hard. And then winning catchment by catchment. So again, from a digital perspective, it's really easy to kind of copy what your competition are doing. If you do that from a data perspective, it becomes a zero-sum game. You're all just using data in the exact same way, and there's no competitive advantage. So what we did is we leveraged this local insights and actually came up with what we call a local area marketing strategy that harnesses the insights we get from the stores themselves. That meant that communication didn't just come from the national brand, but it also came from the stores, that are the stores you shop in as a shopper. Phase 2 of this strategy has seen us activate our store-level insights to win at a product and category level, reflective of not only the price sensitivity of the catchment, but the competitive matrix and the demographic makeup. So harnessing all of those local insights in a decisioning matrix in order for us to win. This has been a game changer for the brand. Last but not least, I'm almost at time, I think I might have gone over, measurement. So alignment on KPIs versus FYIs. Measurement is a hot topic in the industry at the moment, and it should be. But what was really important with New World was to make sure we were measuring the right things and actually create a framework to do so. So not only important what you're measuring, but just as equally important what you don't measure and the frequency in which you measure it. And educating the New World business on how business, marketing and media KPIs influence each other and using that as a guide was incredibly important to get full internal alignment and also to make sure we stayed focused and stayed on track. From a media KPI perspective, it also meant evolving our media metrics in line with audience fragmentation and in line with our future strategy. So again, I talked about this habit of using share of voice as a bit of a planning tool. We moved share of voice from a goal to a guide, and now we actually look at AV share of voice and have also brought in other channels such as social and search as proxies for how we show up competitively in the market. And last but not least, the move from media efficiency to media effectiveness. So we now have measurement frameworks in place that enable us to unlock and see the impact media has on business outcomes. So it's not just about the media results, it's about the business results. So I appreciate I've been a bit of a whirlwind tour, but the final takeaways for you today, moments do really matter. So it's really incredibly important that you understand where the growth is for your audiences and make sure you show up at the right moments with the right message throughout that customer journey. Emotion gives impact in the moment. So not only is emotion incredibly important from a creative perspective, but also making sure you bring that emotion and attention in through your media strategy as well. And lastly, less is more to win the moment. Sacrifice and overcommit. Sacrifice the marketing activities, fund your channels appropriately before you add in another one, and think about consolidating the tactics so that what your plan is the most effective to deliver the biggest and greatest business outcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.